now Twitter has basically broken their rule of neutrality.
Yes.
Which is like they've had this rule like we're going to ban regular users, we're going to leave heads of state up, and that's the way we're going to do it. Now they've taken Trump down, and now there's going to be all these other national precedents saying, okay, what about the president of Senegal that said this against the minority there? What do we do? The president of whoever. What if Putin says this? Like, what? Now Twitter has to keep and maintain a level of consistency in order to not lose.
Does that force politicians to be more diplomatic?
Well, I think it forces like international politicians to remove social media from their societies, to remove American social media, because now they recognize, oh, Jack Dorsey is going to be censoring shit that we say, and we already, like in Turkey, they already did this. Like Erdogan said, yo, we're not using WhatsApp anymore. We're going to develop a state centralized WhatsApp for the Turkish citizens that we're going to use.
And that could potentially do more harm than good.
I mean, it basically, because America
allows them to tap into their data.
America had a stronghold on like digital colonialism, that we were in every country, and any superpower that we were up against didn't fuck with our social media.
Right.
In Russia, they don't use Google, they use Yandex. You know what I mean? In
There's
China,
a reason why China doesn't use any of our social media, because we basically have this tool to extract data from all these other places, and it was convenient for all those other places, just like TikTok, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the argument for banning TikTok.
And most of these countries that were our allies didn't give a fuck, because they were like, at least there's neutrality, and like as long as we don't violate the rules, blah blah blah, Twitter's going to play fair with us. But now that Twitter has broken what seems to be like their rule of like not banning heads of state, what do we do?
Get me closer to there, because I agree with the digital colonialism, right? Which is this idea, like, how do we influence culture? Social media is the most influential tool. Well, we can influence culture around the world if everybody has this social media stuff, if they're using Facebook. And then furthermore, if we need to nudge Zuckerberg and say, yo, there's an election, we might need to go our way in Taiwan. Would you mind, letting people see a few more ads? This is the worst case scenario, but maybe we could.
I think it's completely reasonable.
Very reasonable.
Like there's one election every 4 years in America. There are hundreds of elections every year around the world every year.
And if we have access to all those people in the most sophisticated, like data crunched way to influence them, we could have a lot of influence around the world without actually like bombing and blowing people up.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So I agree with the colonialism, the digital colonialism thing. But what I don't understand is where this discrepancy with Twitter right now. So it's a different policy that they use towards Trump, but you're saying that they've some sort of like broken this contract globally?
It sets a precedent now of not just being neutral with all leaders. Whereas before, hey guys, leaders, you post what you want. We're neutral. We're out of it. The second they show an interest, which is, we're going to ban you for this, President Trump, now President, Prime Minister, whoever around the world, you can't be neutral anymore.
Yeah.
And then the potential
they just have to be neutral on Twitter. So now if those people, if Khomeini wants to say death to Israel, he just got to make sure he don't tweet it.
And then to that point, to his point then, it's like, all right, well, we can't say what we really want to say on Twitter, so fuck Twitter. Let's develop our own social media site. Then we lose out on that data.
But then they also lose out on the social cachet globally, right? Like, you can make a Twitter story happen globally if you are invested in this platform that is global.
Right.
And that's the reason why, like, neutering Trump with the social media was so powerful, is because his voice works because so many people react to his voice. So if you remove his ability to be reacted to, he dies.
Also, to the point, real quick, it was funny that the second they suspended him first, then we got a video. It was like so soon between, hey, you're suspended for 48 hours or whatever it was, and then, all right, now you get your video.
Yeah.
Whereas before, he wasn't backing out for shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and even after his suspension, he came back in, and that's when he said, I'm not at the inauguration, like saying all this other shit that was like, Twitter, I think, saw as dog whistling and like inciting violence or whatever.
See, so I didn't know that Twitter had that rule with heads of state.
Yeah.
So now that I knew that they have like different rules for heads of state, then he shouldn't have gotten kicked off.
But now it's like
before I was like, oh, well, he violated their rules of inciting violence.
Well, that is true. Sorry.
Yeah. And that applies to everybody else.
If the rule, if there's no special precaution, right, for heads of state when in terms of like inciting violence, if he is proved to have incited violence via the app, did he tweet something? That's what I think is interesting. If he's not using the app to incite violence, simply taking him off the app for what he said off the app doesn't make sense to me. Right? Like, if he's, I don't know, like...
Well, like he called people to rally.
You take a murderer off Twitter?
He called people to rally that day. But that's what I'm saying. His nuance in terms of using the correct words, that you can't say like, hey, you said this and that told everybody to do these violent acts. He's good with that, so I don't think you should have kicked him off.
So the tricky thing is, like, for example, you don't want to take off the Black Lives Matter organizers that told people to show up in, was it Kenosha? Where did they fuck shit up?
Kenosha, I think, was one of them.
Yeah.
Minnesota or something like that, where they took, they were really lighting the city up. You don't want to take them off because some assholes that were part of that peaceful protest decide to blow things up.
Exactly.
So should that same thing be applied to Trump? That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
If he didn't explicitly say, yo, go break some windows and fuck things up,
Exactly.
you can't really take him off for that. You have to prove that that's what he meant.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an interesting argument.
think-
And that's where it comes down, I think, like Twitter's domain. And they say, yeah, and they just call balls and strikes. And in this case, they chose to pull Trump off.
Do you think
The
it's
easy-
possible? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think it's possible that there are powers that be? I don't know who those powers are, but maybe it's a collection of like the Pelosi's, the Bidens, the Schumers, these people, and maybe the Mitch McConnells as well. Do you think there's a collection of them that essentially call up big tech and they go, "Hey, he's out of here now. We need to do damage control because it looks like he's really, ready to spiral out of control and really fuck shit up. We have 10 more days or however many more days of the presidency. I need you to get him off all platforms because for the betterment of our country, if this is the start, if he's willing to start this right now, it's going to just get worse in the next 10 days.
It could also be Twitter saving face.
Wait.
Twitter's now there's all these looming lawsuits of like trust busting within tech monopolies,
Trust busting is?
like breaking up the tech monopolies into like multiple companies and like basically
antitrust law.
Yeah, exactly. Demonopolizing.
Monopolize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
So I could see them being like, yo, they're going to come down on us after this whole Trump thing and say that we were complicit in Trump's rise to power, blah, blah, blah. If we just kick them off at the very end, we have all
Look what we
the
did.
social political capital, but we also were like, yo, we took them off when it got out of hand. We did the right thing, blah, blah, blah. They have now a case in court.
And I think they've been wanting to do this for a really long time.
Could you
and this
also,
was the
to your point,
perfect
though,
way
think-
of
I
doing
think
it.
I kind of agree with you there, but also low key, there's a little part of me that's like, you fucking scumbags. You motherfuckers profited off of this guy for 4 years.
Yeah.
You made tons of money, got tons of followers. We're in the news every single day. All you tech platforms banked off of Trump, banked off the conspiracies that he would spew, banked off the people that were supporting him. Y'all made billions and billions of dollars. And now that he's gone, now that the cow is gone, that you can't suckle off the teat, you're just going to sacrifice that motherfucker, turn it into
I'm going to
hamburgers.
push back there because you can still, when he's out of office, you can make just as much money off of this guy when he's out of office.
True.
He's going to
has a
keep
voice.
crying that they
So-
stole the election. He's going to keep saying he's going to run again in 4 years. He will stay in the news cycle. That's Trump's power. Trump stayed in the news cycle 4 years before he was president, saying he's the guy that started. Barack wasn't born in America.
But it wasn't, to me, it wasn't the same effect as like a president has, like you can bump up the news cycle, but like when you don't have your finger on the nuclear codes, it's hard to take that as seriously.
I think
in my opinion.
you can still bank a lot. You can make a lot of money.
You
off of Trump.
can, but don't you agree less though?
Sure,
It
sure,
would
but I
probably
don't
be
think it's
less,
so
yeah.
much less that it's like I can immediately say, oh, this is why you're full of shit. I think they're full of shit in a lot of ways. I think they could be doing government bidding. I think they could be whatever. I think it's also possible he was suspended and then he came back and then you still thought he's dog whistling, if we agree with what they thought earlier, to Mark's point. Then it's like, yo, we just suspended you, dog. What the fuck? You're out.
I think this shit. I think that's totally possible. I think this is just like you working for the feds, like. You know what I mean? You got away with doing all the fuck shit for 4 years. You're talking about the big tech companies, and now the feds got you, and they're like, see what y'all let happen, see what you did, inspiring this over the last 4 years, and they're like, fine, I'll flip. I work for you guys now. What do you want me to do?
No, it's possible.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think it's also possible they've been working with.
I think they've, of course, you're not going to let something come to power.
And
But go.
what you said about maybe McConnell and everybody else calling Twitter and being like, yo, you got to get this guy the fuck out. And then they got him out.
CIA too. Like this is.
But to that point, this is why I kind of maybe believe they had help from within the government. I don't understand. If you're the CIA, you're the motherfuckers that we keep America going at all costs. We're going to do the dirtiest
everything is
shit
going
ever.
on.
We know everything is going on and we'll do anything.
You know what's in my phone. You know when you go to the airport, like there's a reason why.
Why him at the airport, bro?
I'm just saying, like, this guy gets randomly searched, and he even the one that they're looking
I
for.
got randomly searched this weekend. Didn't even think anything of it. I get it. Go ahead. Let's go.
And what was that site that got taken down or off the
Parler?
App Store? Parler. Like there were people talking about this for weeks, and they were even talking about, we're coming with our guns, we're coming to fuck shit up. So they've seen this. They knew it was coming.
So if y'all knew what was going on, you know about all these terrorist attacks that don't happen because you thwart them before they can.
That's what I'm
and now
saying.
you're gonna act like this shit just happened under your nose.
We didn't know what to do when they got to the Capitol. We just thought it was gonna be peaceful. Sure, you should have still been ready.
Obvious
so is this one of those situations where like, I don't want to liken it to Pearl Harbor, but like a lot of people say that America knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen, and they just needed an excuse to enter World War II that galvanized the people. Remember, you can't do anything in a country of 300 million people without the people's support, right? Like, you want to talk about going into Iraq, you want to talk about any of these things, you need the people to go, we got to go get them. And did they let this happen so that they had an excuse to bury Trump because both sides were like, I don't want to deal with this motherfucker riling shit up for the next 4, 8, 12 years?
Yeah. From a feelings perspective, like conspiracy wise, like
it seems sound, no?
Yeah. I think that'll probably be the eventual outcome. Whether or not it's intentional or not, we'll never know. But just from like conspiracy angle, like, I think that'll probably be what happens.
Man, it's just such a... Okay, so then let's have the discussion of, is a social media platform a civil right now? I don't know if the MTA is a civil right. Is that my right as a New Yorker? Like, can they say to me, well, just use another metro if you don't like us? I think it's
hard to say civil right when it's a publicly traded company, because that's just a company that you use. And then they can always just say like a civil right.
I think it is a civil right because a business can't turn a person down.
Deny service, right?
And so,
unless you violate the rules.
Yeah, unless you violate the rules.
But let's say I violated the rules of the subway, right? Could I be banned from the MTA, or is that like banning me from walking down the street?
No, I think it bans you from the MTA because you violated the rules of the MTA.
I'm really curious about that. I
I'm
wonder
pretty sure. Yeah.
So you can't ban me from going into the park. You can punish me for a criminal act I commit, but the park is a public place that I can go, right? So I wonder if the same thing will apply to social media as they become these things that we use to communicate with the world and our friends and our family. As the world, it is like entrenched in our life. At what point do they become a civil right? And then when they do become a civil right, can you remove it from me? And does that end up being a violation of my First Amendment rights of free speech?
Yeah, I think it has to be government. It has to be paid for by tax dollars.
That's what
if the park charged admission and you had to come in to pay a private company to go to their park, and then you violate a rule and they're like, you can't come to the park anymore. You fucked up at a private thing.
But if my tax dollars pay for the park, if my tax dollars pay for the MTA, if my tax dollars are supporting Facebook.
Which I think the MTA is subsidized, but you still have to pay for it.
Yes, it is. And I think it might be a private organization that is subsidized by the government.
I believe so.
It is, right? Yeah. But so even if that's the case, it is an interesting space that we're going into.
Now, the interesting one is I think that there is a push to make the internet a civil right.
Right. You've had a lot of conversations about this. Like, what was the initial one? It was maybe a few months back about they wanted to not have limits to the amount of internet or something. It was like a big...
I don't remember that.
No, this was a big debate. Net neutrality, it was called.
Yeah.
That's a different thing. That's like allowing different bandwidths to people who pay more or less or something.
Yeah, that's what I meant by the limits. Not like amount of time, but like, and I think this net neutrality thing gave the average person who wanted to start a website the same real estate, if you will, on the internet as like some big company. So it allowed a startup to propagate because you didn't have to compete with fucking Target or Walmart in terms of your usage of the internet. But I go.
No, I don't know.
I just wonder if as these things become like parts of our life in the same way water is, I know it sounds crazy to think of the internet as like water or heat or these things that are supposed to be provided, but it could be ubiquitous.
Yeah. I view the internet as like the street. You know what I mean? Like, assuming that you aren't like in violation of like the law of that area and you should be in jail, like you should be allowed to walk down the street. That doesn't mean you should be allowed to go into any business you want, assuming that you violate the rules of that specific business.
You can't punch someone on the street.
Right. So you have to obey the rules of the street, and you are allowed to be barred from the private businesses that reside on the street.
So if that's the case, does the government and therefore the people decide the rules of the internet, those internet sites, once it becomes the street, and not Jack Dorsey at Twitter?
Yeah.
I
don't
think it
see
has
that.
to, right?
Nah, because it's like you're just giving them the right to get on the internet. Once you're on the internet, if you go to any site, that site is owned by
If
someone
the
else.
internet is a street,
So-
this website is the store within that
Yes.
street.
Right. Yeah. The store sits on the
Any
street.
of the stores, whether they be websites, social media, those are all private stores.
Yeah, homeless guy can walk around the street. That's not technically a law or illegal. But if a homeless guy goes into a restaurant, they can be say, "Get the fuck out."
Yeah,
Okay,
I
what
don't ever-
is Facebook then a mall? You know how homeless people can be in a mall,
Yeah.
right? And because the mall is essentially public property, like these outdoor mall or whatever the fuck it is, like you can't. I don't think you can remove homeless people from.
I think you can.
You can.
I mean, I've been kicked out of a bunch of malls in my life.
Fair enough.
For what?
Des
You
Bryant
go
got
there as
kicked
a high
out of a mall
schooler.
for sagging.
For what?
I remember
Really?
this was a big story, like his second year in Dallas. He got kicked out of a mall for sagging.
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
What did you
maybe
get
it's
kicked
more-
out?
We were filming a video in the mall, and the cops or like the mall security was like, "You can't be in here," and they kicked us out.
Yeah,
This happened,
reasonable.
This happened like 3 or 4 times.
Reasonable. Shouldn't be filming in the mall. Fucking kids are out there.
I'm a kid. I was a kid at the time.
So whatever. Kids can't do that to kids still. I don't know. It's just a weird time. Go.
Do you think Trump gets impeached? I mean, time is running out, boy. You got 9 days or something like that.
But they can continue with it after.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
You can continue. You can impeach even after he's gone.
Yeah,
That
so
shit is
it's
so
like
embarrassing, bro. You're at your
then
home.
then you remove, and you find out you got impeached.
Come on, bro.
Yeah, but I think then you're just removing all those different luxuries that you have from being president,
Right. Okay.
which he doesn't really fucking need. I think it's just how do we remove this guy from potentially running again, from running
Running in the primaries.
in the primaries.
Yeah.
That's what they want. They're just worried about. They're trying to remove his political capital, and it's a fucking ballsy move, but he's making it very easy for them.